What's up guys? How the heck are you doing? If you're new here, my name is Drucifer and welcome to today's video. Today's video is all about videography and photography and maybe a little bit of B-roll basics. So, if you saw that intro, that is for a camera that I just bought from a thrift store for $2. It is the Kodak Explorer 35mm film camera. You can watch this video here. It actually talks about it where I picked it up in a thrift store. Now, beyond that, talking about why this type of videography or photography is important. So, early on in my career, probably about 10 to 12 years ago, I did a lot of this type of thing. And this was for me so I could practice at home and practice the fundamentals of B-roll, practice the fundamentals of product photography. So this is really before Instagram made this kind of thing popular. It was really before Instagram or people like Daniel Schiffer were on YouTube. And a lot of that is what photographers that have been doing this for a while, they did this same type of thing. So you couldn't go to YouTube or Instagram to see this type of stuff. You had to basically look at trade magazines, like Photographer Magazine and that sort of thing. Now, a lot of times those magazines wouldn't talk about product photography, so you would have to seek it out on blogs and stuff like that online. I know it seems ridiculous to think now how accessible all of this information is, and just a decade ago it was hard to find. So I would look through magazines and I would look at editorial pieces, editorial type photographs of products, and I'd always be like, I wonder if I can shoot this bleach bottle the same way it is shot here in this magazine, or I wonder if I could shoot these glasses the same way that they're shot here in this catalog. Cologne was a big one. I'd always shoot bottles of cologne, and even toys. So my son at the time, he was a toddler, so he had all of these cool toys, action figures and stuff like that. So I would try to shoot them like they would pose them in like a Christmas catalog or something like that. It was also fun to shoot cool things like Red Bull cans and Vans, shoes, and try to send those emails off and try to send them to the company. Sometimes this would work and you would get jobs. Other times you would just get shut down because they have photographers on their staff. So, but more or less, it was a good way to drive those fundamentals and practice your skills. So over here, over my left shoulder, is the setup that I used to shoot that intro. So all I want to do is I want to break down the little miniature set I built, tell you guys about the camera settings, tell you guys about some of the little tips and tricks I did to get that shot, and break down the edit and just show you guys the timeline of why I made the choices I made. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at the set. All right guys, so here is the set. So I'm just gonna point out a couple of the props that I decided to use and why I decided to go that direction. So obviously the camera is called the Kodak Explorer. So I wanted some things that sort of played off of that theme. And I happen to have a lot of weird stuff in my house. If you watch my vlogs, I talk a little bit about it, and you see me sometimes going thrifting on Thursdays. So me and my wife, we're always picking up weird stuff, and it really pays off when you do stuff like this. So I know that I wanted the camera front and center. So I have the camera here, and it is propped up on 2 Indiana Jones VHS tapes. You can't really see those in the shot, but on the off chance that you might get a glimpse of what that is, you would see that it's Indiana Jones, and that plays on the Explorer theme that we got going on. So I have this compass. It's just a cheap little $5 compass from Walmart. I decided to prop that up in there. It goes with the Explorer theme. I'm not even sure that in the final shot you see this skull, but again, it's there. It helps that theme out, and if you get a glimpse of it, there's no mistaking for what it is. So here is a metal box. This is just something we got from a thrift store, just your average metal box here. I just like the texture of it and just the little bit of gold that reflects off of it onto the other items near it. Here we have this little pharaoh sarcophagus. This is a really weird item. And it's weird because we got this from a thrift store, but if you open it up, there's actually a mummy inside. Don't ask me why we have this. We just thought it was neat, so we picked it up. I just thought that that was cool. It would go definitely with the Explorer theme, and that is one of the first things you see in the shot. Does it really go without saying? I have a field notes notebook here. I don't need to beat that dead horse. You guys know I love these. I also have my passport, which is gnarly. I have never traveled international, but I do have a passport. I need to change that, so I would love to go to like Iceland or, you know, just overseas. Back here, if you can see this, this is a lantern, like an old style lantern, and this is an oil burning lantern, and I'm not burning oil in it. I have a quasar tube sitting behind it. If you don't know what a quasar tube is, it is basically just a light tube, and I have it on just a warmer temperature here, and it is just propped up behind this lantern to look like it is illuminating this set here. I also have this industrial lamp. This lamp is pretty cool. You can kind of see it more. It has an Einstein bulb in it, the ones where you can see the filament, so that's pretty cool. I have this little blue RGB pocket light by Falcon Eyes. I have it propped up here, and this is to help just add a little bit of a cooler tone. So you guys know all about the blue and teal color scheme that a lot of filmmakers use, and there is a reason that they use those two colors. They complement each other. So I was looking for my main color, which I knew was going to be this warmer, this orange hue, and then I thought, okay, well, what is going to complement that? So I went with that blue color for a little bit of edge lighting on a lot of these props. So back here behind the camera, I have some books stacked up. I have like 2 journals and a planner, and then another Indiana Jones VHS here that the lantern's sitting on top, and this little weird brass candle holder. Again, not sure it's in the shot, but if it is, it's gonna look cool if the camera happens to pick up a little piece of it. So over here on the left side, I have some specimens in jars, and these are fake. This is a brain, and this was used in one of my short films, The Butcher. It's a brain, and then this is some fingers. So if you guys are new here, I'm a horror filmmaker, so I have these weird props all around my studio as well. And the reason I thought these would be cool is just for the fact that it's like, who knows what the Explorer camera would be used for. Is it being used for the pyramids in Egypt? Is it being used for exploring a mad scientist lab? Is it being used for anthropology? Who knows, right? So it leaves a little bit to the mystery to try to create that story, and that's important whenever you're making these product shoots. You sort of want to craft a story by using these props. So just create something that people can grasp onto visually and have them make up a story in their mind. So I have some, I was going to use some Halloween creepy cloth, but I have this just sheer black cloth. I think it is Halloween. I think there's bats printed on it. So I had this just laying around the studio. So I hung it back here on the back side of my lights just to give it a little bit more texture back there, even though my studio wall back here is black. I just have a table that I'm shooting all of this on, that I have all this set up on, with a black backdrop, photo backdrop, just laid over the table. And that's about it. Oh, and one more thing. Smoke. Smoke is very important. And I just went and I bought some cheap Nag Champa incense from Walmart. This was like $1. Now, I have haze in a can, or I thought I did. I guess I used it all on my last film, so I was tearing my studio apart saying I have to have smoke for this shot. That is what's gonna make it, you know, just over the top. And couldn't find my haze in a can, and so I found these at Walmart. Incense, just throw some incense in your shot, it'll give you some smoke, it'll look good, and that's pretty simple. So let's talk about what I used to shoot this intro. So I used the Sony a6400. You can watch this video here if you haven't to see my full impressions of the a6400, but I absolutely love this little camera. You can use any camera though, as long as it shoots slow motion. You can even use your phone. So I think we're gonna do one of these in the near future using an iPhone, just to show you guys that you can do it and get professional looking results. But the Sony a6400 and the Sigma 16mm 1.8 lens. Now, why did I use a 1.8 instead of something that was more telephoto or like an 85mm or a macro lens even? So one reason, and it's kind of ridiculous, I am on a wide angle lens kick right now, and that's because I was watching an interview with Tim Ives, one of the cinematographers of Stranger Things, and he was talking about his love for wide angle lenses, and that's it. So I typically always shoot with primes, and I've always liked wide angle lenses, but it's nice to hear that somebody like Tim Ives also likes them. So it really drives me to continue using my wide angle lenses. Now, had the camera had some patina on it, if it was more like vintage, you know, like a camera from the 50s or the 60s with like the aluminum body, using something like a macro lens would have been really cool to get some fine detail shots of the patina and just like of the more ornateness that those vintage cameras have. But this camera is just boxy, it's just black. It has a cool like waterproofing gasket and hinge on one side, but that's it. I just really wanted to showcase the Explorer nameplate on the camera, and I could do that with a wide angle lens. Now it is cool to get those shots in there, so if you're doing this, definitely play around with different focal lengths, but I think for like the 30-second intro or whatever, this little 30-second spot I did, I think just one focal length was fine. If it was something a little longer or maybe something for a paying client, maybe I would have mixed it up with focal lengths, but to just get the practice, to just drive it home and get my point across, this did just fine. So the settings, what settings did I use? Obviously slow motion. I used Sony's S&Q 120 frames per second. S&Q only shoots in 1080, but I just upscaled it to 4K. Again, I talk about that in my a6400 video here. No issues there upscaling, and I think it did really, really well. Like I said, you can use probably 60 frames per second, but then you run the risk of having shaky footage. So at 120 frames per second, I was doing everything handheld. I was just slowly doing some pans and some tilts and some top-down twist kind of shots. And I don't know, it turned out well, but I still had to stabilize some of my shots in DaVinci Resolve. And I'll show you guys all of that when we get in the edit here in just a minute. So let's go ahead. I want to show you how I got this done in the edit. So let's go ahead and let's do that. All right guys, so here we are in DaVinci Resolve, and I'm gonna just make this sort of short and sweet and just show you sort of how I put this intro together. So right here is our timeline, and you can just watch as I scrub through it, and you can kind of see where on the second video track where I decided to put my cuts, right? So essentially in DaVinci Resolve, you can fade in your clip. So right here you see this little knob. I can drag this back and forth and just fade in my clip so it fades in from black like that. Same with the music. The music can ramp up, and you can either make it match exactly your clip, which is what I should do, and it just ramps up the clip. So the reason I wanted to start with this clip is because I wanted to start with the camera not in focus, because I didn't want people to see that it's an Explorer camera until the music has this hit right here, if you see where my cursor is at. And then I wanted people to be like, oh crap, it's an Explorer camera, right? But I wanted people to get the vibe that, okay, this is sort of like a in a tomb or something like that. That's why I wanted this pharaoh's head in the foreground. And then it was pretty hilarious because as I was moving the camera, I'd have to waft the smoke with one hand just to make sure the incense smoke was blowing across the scene. And then I wish I didn't have it as in focus here, because I don't like that you can see the Explorer nameplate. And I could probably do something about that, like cut it sooner, but I really don't want to mess with the music too much, because if I cut this sooner, I'm going to have to mess with the music, so, because we would have to end it like here. You know what? For all things considered, let's just try it. Let's just try it and see if it still works. Have to make sure the music still has the right vibe though. And then that'll shorten the intro a little bit. So let's just watch it back. Yeah, so that actually is better. I like it how it's even shorter, because something like this where you only have a intro or a little spot that is 28 seconds long, you don't want to spend too long on one shot. So we've got gold in this shot, we got blue shining here on our scene, and again here you got that blue edge lighting, and of course you have all the gold color around, you got smoke. So I wanted to just cut where the music hits. So the easiest way to do that, guys, is you edit by your music. So you can, zoom in here real tight, and you can just sort of see where the music hits. So we know it hits here, you know it hits here, and you know it hits right around here. So if you just listen, you'll be able to tell where it hits. So for this shot right here, I literally just had my camera and I was coming up and twisting the camera as we went up. So that's how I got that shot. And I actually am playing this clip in reverse. You can see how the smoke is moving backwards. I just thought it looked a little cooler, a little bit smoother. Again, you see where this shot ends? It ends where this hits at. So as long as you're matching up your cuts with where the hits are in the music, then it's going to have such a bigger impact on your audience. You may not realize that, but this is something that editors subconsciously do, and it really just makes you feel the edit just a little bit more, actually a lot bit more. So always cut to the music. I'm guilty of not doing this in the past, and just things are so much better when you cut to the music. So again, back to this shot, I feel like it needed to end on that shot where it's twisting up, because I feel like this is such a powerful shot, and I needed to get something that just showed the Kodak nameplate in there, because if I was doing this for a company, I want to make sure that I'm showing up close the branding. So this shot right here didn't have any movement in it. It was actually a static shot. The glory of DaVinci Resolve is you see this little tab here. Instead of having to keyframe anything, you just hit dynamic zoom, because this is the actual shot right there. You see that? It doesn't have the same impact if it's just static. It needs that movement because all the other shots around it had movement. So hit that dynamic zoom, and you see how it pulls out. And then we go back to this shot here, and then we just fade out. Again, easiest way to fade out in DaVinci Resolve, guys, is you just grab your little thing here and you just slide it back and forth, and that'll fade to black, or it will fade into you. Same with the music, or fade in for you rather. So when it came to color correcting this, let me show you one of these clips. These are actually the talking clips that you saw right before here. So let's take this shot here, for example. So over here, if you're not a DaVinci user, you have these are called nodes, and then you can stack these nodes by just selecting different options here. But that is what it looked like ungraded. So this is straight out of the camera with the A6400 shooting in the HLG2 color profile. I could have shot an S-Log, but to be honest with you guys, I was a little lazy, just shot an HLG2. S-Log would have gave me a little bit more leeway when it came to actually grading this. So Control D to throw that back on, and boom, that's what you get. And that's sort of what a lot of the shots sort of look like. So this one here, that's straight out of camera. That's with a little bit of edit I did. Straight out of camera with a little bit of edit I did. And I realized like a lot of these shots were already sort of there in terms of color because I lit the scene, and this is how I like to do my films. I like to light on set and then really dial in the look, and then it requires like a whole lot less editing, and that saves you a lot of time on the back end. So if you see down here in this left corner, all I really did, guys, was I adjusted my curves. So if I click this, this brings up my curves. I brought up this little tail here, and all that is that fades the film just a little bit, just fades the image a little bit to give it that little bit of faded film look. Here, you know, this brings down your shadows. So if you see that, I just brought that down, and this brings down your highlights. I just wanted to bring down my highlights just a little bit. You can see right there on the right side, right here. If I bring this down, you see that that gets a little bit darker. And that is essentially all I did with every clip. And then I went over to my color wheels, and you could see here, I gave a 1 on the contrast right here, and the offset right here. All that does is gives you a little bit of difference in between the highlights and the lowlights. You can see that on your scopes here. Up here at the very top, that is my highlights, and they are of course clipping a little bit right here in these specular highlights that are basically just reflections off the jars. And of course I'm clipping in the shadows just a tad bit down here on the low. My mids are pretty good on my blue channel, it looks like, so I'm not too worried about that. Some of the shots I had to do a little bit of extra detailing to, like this one I had to adjust the gamma and the lift. And once you get in DaVinci Resolve, guys, you can do so many things in the grade. You just have to just mess around and find out what each thing does. So again, if you are a Premiere user, give DaVinci Resolve Studio a try. The color grading software in here is so much freaking better, so much easier to use than Premiere's. This makes you feel like a professional grading in this software compared to Adobe Premiere's Lumetri Color. That seems very, I don't know, elementary compared to this. So I don't want to drag this out too long, but that's essentially, guys, how I created this. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to start doing these on a more consistent basis. The reason I chose to do this was I recently watched a Peter McKinnon and Chris Ramsey video where he was talking about how he does his intros, and it reminded me, like I said, about 10 years ago, I used to do this stuff all the time. And to be honest with you, this is something that you would sort of shoot for like social media or your YouTube channel. And I'm out of practice sort of doing these things, so I'm going to do them more often to get more creative with the B-roll on my channel. This isn't something I would do for a film, so I haven't really been, like I said, doing this creative process. But it is a lot of fun, so I'll be doing it a lot more often on this channel. If you guys have any more questions or any type of video you would like to see, drop it down in the comments. I would love to answer it for you. And I do want to do a full breakdown of grading in DaVinci Resolve Studio, so if you want to see that, make sure you let me know down below. Other than that, guys, check out this video here. It is going to help you with more filmmaking tips, tricks, and tutorials. As always, make sure you sub, ding the bell, and leave me a comment. And just go shoot. And I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.